Okay, hello. Today is May 31st, 2022, and we'll pay homage to two architects, Lebbeus and Zvi Hecker, both born on May 31st. I have various presentations on them. In fact, this year I started 2 years ago with a big presentation about Lebbeus. Now is another attempt, and I thank you that you are here. This will be a shorter version of what happened 2 years ago, but it's just a kind of a quick aide memoir of some of the works about some of the works by Lebbeus, whom I knew personally. We even had a friendly, very friendly relationship, a very interesting man and an incredible draftsperson. Most of his work was not built, was drawn, but his imagination was incredible, and his ability to visualize this imagination was equally incredible. This man made these drawings manually. But when he made this drawing, the computer was not yet used properly. There is conflict in his drawings. He was not just a great renderer or illustrator in architecture. He was a philosopher, a man who thought through drawings. And there is conflict, there is war. Maybe this is a reflection of the fact that he lost his father in a little bit after the Second World War. Yes, there is war. In fact, he even published a book, War is Architecture, Architecture is War. And you can see even in this image, destruction, ruin, and so on. The same here. He created large series of works. He drew incessantly, continuously, and in a very skillful way. What do we see here? We see crazy architectures, maybe, unfortunately very possible if, monstrous forms of war come into being. Here again, it's war. Again, you see on the sky, the destructiveness that man is capable of bringing to earth. War and architecture. Pamphlet architecture published by Princeton Architectural Press. This is an image. Well, what do we see here? It's a humanity that got crazy, that, there is war, there is viscerality, there is suffering, there is energy, but there is energy. This energy, I think we all need, even if not in this futuristic, this is a futurist painting by Boccioni. Kind of that dynamic quality of an exacerbated dynamism can be found also in the works of Lebbeus. Like here, this is a drawing from his series about Berlin. Berlin, of course, which was involved in the Second World War and destroyed and so on. So these are psychological representations of eventful facts that had at their core conflict. Again, we see here, we are kind of talking about, tigers and rabbits. Well, this is kind of what we are taught to behave like and build like. And this is the explosion of the unconscious. This is the rebelliousness, the robust exteriorization of the inner forces which were repressed. Here we see repression, the repression of a petite bourgeois life. Here we see the tumultuousness of the eruption. This is the word, eruption. Try to make an eruptive architecture, an architecture which erupts, just like Vesuvius erupts, like a volcano. All of these things came from his imagination and drawn by his hand. His work is very complex. This is just a very quick aide memoir of some images of his work. He had many exhibitions. Some drawings were very large, some smaller, but he drew unbelievably well with colored pencils. He would do wonders. But these are not illustrations of seen buildings. These are renderings of his own imaginings. Lebbeus Woods, who is very, very, very admired by outside of the country, although he didn't build. He only contributed to a building that Stephen Hall, his friend, built in China. And that thanks to Stephen Hall, because he invited him. Now, look at this building, right? This building is like what we do in schools, like this one, and this one. And look what Lebbeus Woods proposed. It's something else, isn't it? It's crazy. Or it could be even scary. It's scary, but it's vital. It has dynamic qualities, and it doesn't say, well, it's paradoxical, because in a way it does say no to life, but it actually says yes to life, in as much as Heraclitus thought that war is the father of all things. Here, what do we see here? War. We see the death of the old. These buildings are ruined by war, and here we see the explosions. This man was visualizing architectural explosions, and you know, it's about the disruption of the old in this case, by war. But in a way, this is what an avant-garde artist does. In a way, an avant-garde artist is proposing exactly this, to break down the old order. Here, it's possible he did his drawing before the World Trade Center came down, but it's very similar now. It's almost like a plane entering through the prism of the office tower. I'm sure he did this before 2001. It was almost like an anticipation. Sometimes it is said, life copies art. He didn't do this, but they created, some people created this digital modeling of a building he just drew. Interesting though, if it was built, but it is not built. It's just a rendering. But the rendering is splendid. You could swear it's built. This is I don't even know how he did this. This is his theory about earthquake architecture, an architecture which comes into being after the eruption of after the an earthquake. This is for Sarajevo. I think he proposed this. It's the monster of war in a way, but it's telling the truth about the capacity of humankind to destroy itself at this point. But look at the splendid graphic quality of the drawing. You know, in a way, it's a paradox that the meaning is not so Apollonic, but the manner of drawing. Just look how he drew the sky. And this is not a process by Photoshop. This is handmade drawing. It's done with colored pencils. He is the Piranesi of our time. He was. He is. I mean, just look at the clouds. You know, he took the time. And why did he? You know, because he was expressing his inner world, and this is exactly what I beg you to do also. Express your inner world, whatever that world is. You know, dreamy, nightmarish. Express it. Take it out. You'll feel better about yourself. This is the image I use for the and indeed, you know, you see this thing and you say, what is this? You know, well, it came from his unconscious. It came from his inner world. It's a rebelliousness against the predictability and the static, you know, deadly static attributes of the existing building. So it's a protest. It is protesting. Lebbeus Woods is protesting against you know, dogma, against conformism, against tradition, perhaps, although the manner in which he drew was traditional. You know, these renderings, these are traditionally done with colored pencils, and they are done exquisitely. But he didn't draw something that he saw outside of himself. He drew something that was inside himself. Anyway, what's good now is that if you are stirred up by some of these things, you can go to your own computer and search on Google Images and otherwise, and find lots of materials. He even has a very interesting blog. He was very articulate, a great critical mind, and very capable of expressing himself about architecture. Lebbeus Woods, happy birthday to you, Lebbeus. I remember when I invited him to visit me in Brooklyn, because that's where we met. I was living in New York for a good number of years, and he came after a while. I kept insisting, and he came. And in my room where I was working, my atelier, my studio, so to speak, I placed the drawings that I wanted him to see on the walls. But what I didn't want him to see, I tried to hide them behind the screen. And when he entered the room, he went straight behind that screen, and I told him, Lebbeus, what I want you to see is on the walls. He said, no, I don't want to see what you want me to see. I want to see what you want to hide from me. And this is in a way what I'm trying to ask you to do also. You know, open up. Say things that are boiling within you. Don't hide them. No, he drew unbelievably, Lebbeus Woods. And he died, and I never asked him how he did actually do these things. Once I thought of asking him to teach me how to do perspective, you know, quickly and efficiently. He was one of the highest paid illustrators or renderers in New York City at the time when drawings were done still manually. This is a structure which was built based on his drawings, I think in Los Angeles. He became increasingly famous. There are books published on him and so on. The young architects and students revere him. This is just a quick, as I said, this is what he was doing in the 80s. You know, imaginary architectures, but very complex, very intricate, as you can see. Well, this image is not really at peace with itself or the world, nor is this one. There is destruction, there is war, there is conflict, but they are part of life, are they not? Here is the man in his apartment. Hello, Lebbeus. Now a funny thing perhaps is his apartment doesn't look like his drawings. Everything is in order. I'm referring mainly to the library, but not only the library, and rather bourgeois. Anyway, here he is drawing, writing, drawing. He was professor at Cooper Union for a number of years, and anyway, I have many things to tell you about him, but I'm kind of in a hurry now. This is what he built. He built this thing in a complex of buildings erected actually by his friend Stephen Hall in China, a complex of apartment buildings. And he invited his friend Lebbeus Woods to break the building with this luminous so-called disorder, because this emanate light at night. But it's quite big, you know. It's you know, the side is you know, 4, 5, 6 floors high. So you know, maybe almost you know, 15, 20 meters one side of this square, bringing the disorder of freedom within a building which has already a significant degree of freedom. This is a drawing he did that inspired Hollywood to make a movie, and they didn't ask for his permission, so he sued. It was a movie with Bruce Willis, and they did it exactly as his drawing shows. and he went to court with Hollywood, and he won the proceedings because he was right. So that's, I think, when he was able to move into that penthouse. That's it. A very insufficient presentation. I even wrote a long poem about Lebbeus 2 years ago as an homage to him, but I'm sure we'll have other occasions to talk about him. Now we'll talk about also rather quickly about Zvi Hecker, with whom he has something in common a little bit. And he admired Zvi Hecker. He wrote about Zvi Hecker on his blog, and you can read what he wrote. And so let's talk about Zvi Hecker. This architect who was born in Krakow, I think in Poland, and then immigrated to Israel, but he has spent some years in Samarkand, beautiful, beautiful city. So there were influences in his work. He was born just like Daniel Lipskind, was also born in Krakow. So they are both Polish, Daniel Lipskind and Zvi Hecker. But Zvi Hecker, a little bit less known than Daniel Lipskind, but a remarkable architect. Here he is. Happy birthday to you, Zvi. I'm sad. I regret I didn't invite you to this imperfect presentation. But on the other hand, I'm happy I didn't, because I know it's not my best presentation. But anyway, we'll honor you. We start with this. So again, this Polish architect born in Poland arrived in Israel, I guess, in the 50s or so. But I don't know exactly when he arrived in Israel. And I will show some of his early works. This is one of them when he worked with other architects. Alfred Neumann, also very interesting Israeli architect. This is an apartment building, an apartment complex in Israel from 1961, 1964. Now look at this building. This building itself is not a conventional block of flats, is it? But what do we see here? Again, we see the sculptor in the architect. We see the architect who wants to assert herself with vigor, with artistry, with courage, taking risks, and so on. You'll see others even more so. But this is also remarkable, and it's from 1960s in Israel. Bravo to them. A block of flats, but maybe the very words are not quite appropriate. Block of flats. Danziger laboratory building in Haifa, Neumann and Hecker again. Geometry is very present, but geometry that submits itself to artistic rhythms, and even the details, are engaging, sculptural, provocative almost. A very vigorous architecture, really. And he worked with Neumann, but he also worked by himself a good number of years, and we are going to see his buildings. Also, what do we see? Colored concrete. Colored, yes, colored, because color is important to life. In fact, I cannot imagine life without color. Look at this detail. It has the sculptural qualities of a similar, in terms of function, similar so-called detail in the works of Le Corbusier. Ramot housing. Large complex of buildings again in Israel, apartment buildings, but not banal apartment buildings like this one here. This was not built by them, this one, but these were built by them. And we are going to see others also very, very interesting. Look at this. Look at this, and this is almost social housing. I mean, these are for, not privileged people, for poor people. Why do poor people have to live in banal buildings? They don't. I would say quite the opposite. Maybe they deserve very special surroundings, very special buildings. And this is, and yes, what's interesting here is that you will see images of this building that he built before ad hoc interventions, made in time, probably even now without authorization, but what is interesting is that somehow, even there are these things that disturb the purity of the project, somehow they are integrated in the name of life in the larger scheme of things. And I think it's fine. It's this is a detail from a museum he built. We are going to see it, but I like even this fragment, because it's like I want you to be, in other words, to open up. This world opens up. No, it's porous in a way, but it's porous in the opposite sense. It comes towards you. It reacts to you. It's not blank, like this world. It has texture. It has character. It has life. A drawing by Zvi Hecker. That's the kind of drawings I would like to see in Minku. In the studios, express yourselves courageously with color, if necessary, drink a little bit of Jamaican rum before, or have courage, dance in your drawings, even wildly if necessary, express yourselves. Spiral Apartment House, 1989. Look what he did here in also, you saw this one in the announcement. Why don't you make such buildings in your projects, which will not be built anyway? So invoking the rules and regulations is totally nonsense, because it's not going to be built. Your project done in school should explore as many possibilities as possible. Because if you don't do it in school, when? It is not going to be built. So you should explore ideas as freely and as courageously and as joyously as possible. Without joy, you cannot create. No student ever in our schools of architecture would conceive such a building. And the question is why? It's because you are tamed. That's why. Your wild side is tamed, if not killed. And it shouldn't be so. There is life in this building. Okay, it's imperfect. Yes, the functionalists could say, well, how am I to bring the piano here? Or I don't know what. Forget the piano. Everybody has a piano in an apartment, in a block of flats. No way. And if you can't, buy Yamaha, or how is it called, an electronic synthesizer or something, which is much smaller, and you can walk up the stair with it under your arm. Please don't listen to the dogmas of Mr. Neufert. Mr. Neufert had his meaning, but do you know that Mr. Neufert, Ernst Neufert, loved Antoni Gaudi? Can you believe it? Yes, Ernst Neufert loved Antoni Gaudi, and he was actually a student of the Bauhaus. But here we see spirals, we see the demons of expressivity, we see the demons of a creativity which refuses to conform itself and which risks at entering into conflict with its majesty, the law, the legal authorities. Forget the legal authorities. Do you see here the hanged, clothes, like you see them in Italy and even in Romania and in many other places of the world? This is a sign of life. It's fine. It's okay. This is the interior of one of, clearly here, people without affluence live, but look at the room, okay, the timid functionalist would say, I cannot place my furniture here. Of course you can. Of course you can. But we are so conventional in our appraisal of reality and in our expectations that we think if a wall is a little bit at a different angle or, not quite vertical, we cannot use it. Of course you can use it. And if not, you can design or build something specifically for that particular crazy wall. It's okay. This is the interior of a chapel for the military, if you can imagine, It's a religious building. You know, this is what this man built for the Israeli army. You know, I wish there were some fathers of the Orthodox Church here. Again, back to this, in my opinion, beautiful building. Beautiful because true, because that's how life is. It has big shadows, big erosions, spirals, unexpected things. That's how life is. It's not like our common, you know, quiet, rectangular, predictable buildings. No, although he was able to work with geometries and unusual geometries, almost utopian buildings, like here, they were built in Israel. Utopia is a more recent project by him. I think in his later works, he became a little bit less interesting, maybe because he didn't have commissions. I'm not trying to justify him. This is a school he actually built in Germany. It's a school, if you can believe it. Would you make such a school, dear students? Would you have the guts to propose such a school in school, which will not be built? No, of course not. You have to use the T-square and the rectangle, right? Back to a fragment of, and again, I see here the visceralities of life, the beautiful disorder of life. This is a city hall he built together with Neumann, the beginning in the, I don't know, 50s or 60s in Israel. The Ramot Polin apartments, we already saw some images. Now, I'm zigzagging now and a little bit in a hurry, but we still pay homage to Zvi Hecker, and he deserves it. Again, do you dare to do an apartment building like this? I'm sure you have the imagination. I'm sure you love geometry. I'm sure you might have the tools to imagine something like this, but it doesn't even cross your mind because you are taught to only build vertical walls and horizontal slabs and just have rectangular buildings. Well, not everybody thinks in this way. And the children seem to enjoy themselves, as you can see them there at that, you know, unusual window. Zvi Hecker, about whom no one talks in the school, but I think he should be known because I actually think he's more interesting than I almost said Zvi Hecker, but he is Zvi Hecker than Peter Zumthor, or Olgiati for that matter, who bores me to death. You see this handrail here was probably added later by a client, by someone, an inhabitant of this building, and it's in a different spirit. It's okay. It's clearly not in the same style, but it's okay. Because the dynamic system that Zvi Hecker employed here allows for the imperfections of you know, additions, subtractions, and so on. By the way of these you know, geometrical figures, I thought of just quickly show you the Expo Tower in Osaka, in Japan, from 1970, which was built by Kiyonori Kikutake, another important Japanese architect. So you see again and again, you know, architects who explore formally interesting things and build them. Architecture as an idea, this is what Lebbeus Woods wrote on Zvi Hecker. So it's interesting that both architects actually were born on the same day. So I'm reading what Lebbeus Woods wrote about Zvi Hecker. Architecture as an idea cannot be limited to one-off masterpieces, but should create an inspiring fabric of spaces and ways of living, a tapestry of human invention and aspiration. It is possible to imagine a vibrant urban tapestry, a city with many Zvi Hecker buildings, while it is not possible to imagine the same with the singular buildings of, say, Zaha Hadid. And he was friends actually with Zaha Hadid. Yeah, you see that what Zvi Hecker built allows for you know, it's open to interventions that are even contrary to his system. His system is not rigid, and this hybridity that is allowed to happen is a good thing, I think. Like here, this has nothing to do with what he proposed, but it's okay. That's how life is. We cohabit, right, with our differences, with our individualities, with what we believe in. These windows here have nothing to do with the windows of what he proposed. These are interventions of the inhabitants that modified the initial scheme, so to speak. I think the people living there are probably inspired. I don't know. You know, real art and real architecture cannot be totally legal. I like his smile there. You know, you said it, Zvi Hecker. Yes, you said it. You are right. Yes. You know, real art and real architecture cannot be totally legal. And that's why you smile. And I think we all have joy in doing what is interdicted, what is restricted. What is interdicted usually provokes joy in the one who, transgresses the interdiction. Try to be free, express yourself and long for joy. If you don't have joy in what you work, you'll get sick psychologically and maybe even physically. Work with joy, and then you'll be fine. You'll live a long life, like Doshi, who said it. Love what you work and work what you love. Work what you love, not what other people ask you to do. Work what you love and love what you work. And that's exactly what I was talking about. You don't love what you work, because if you loved what you work, you will not leave your drawings on the corridor. So one day they will be thrown to the garbage. Now, if you love what you work, you take care of the drawing. But if you don't love it, anyway, we saw this image of this room, other images of the same building, or buildings, should we say? You know, because it's not really monolithic. The Jewish school in Berlin, John Haydock, who was the dean at Cooper Union, wrote about this building. You saw already a few images. There is this interesting website called Uncube Magazine, which I recommend to you. And I even like the word uncube, which is grammatically maybe not correct, but I love it. Uncube. I think we need more of an uncube or uncubic mentality. And these are preliminary drawings for the school. He built it. As you can see, this is the top view. It is much more interesting, it's true, from the top than from the level of the eye. But he built it. If you can imagine, it's a house. It's a school. Sorry, I am rather agitated, and I had been agitated from the very beginning. But we are still saying happy birthday to Zvi Hecker in our own way today. I like this school very much, especially seen from above. I like the plan. It's dynamic, it's crazy, it's spiralic. It's about, if you are not dynamic now when you are young, when? You are supposed to be volcanoes at this age, not later. Don't postpone it. Be volcanoes with all risks. And if one says something, tell them, I'm informed. I saw architectures done with the same tumultuousness. Allow us to be tumultuous too. Drawings, sketches, model. Unfortunately, from the level of the eye, something is lost. I think, the walls, maybe because it is built in Germany, maybe there were some, requirements from the client. I would have liked these walls to have more porosity and to vibrate more, but it's an imperfect world. It's true. It's much more interesting seen from above. The materiality here, the tectonics are a little bit almost in contrast with the initial ideas or sketches or impulses. Anyway, he built it. I don't know what this is. Back to the school in Berlin, drawing snakes, sunflower, you name it. It's both, inspired by the sunflower and by the snakes. Yeah, it's a vortex essentially, and maybe all schools should be vortexes to express the energy of the young, of the youth. If we love the young, and we should love them and respect them, have affection for them, we should encourage them to grow as free people, and without fear. Not everything is perfect here. I said, both the interior and the exterior from the level of the eye is rather, it's not as tumultuous and earthy and raw as his drawings were, and as the image from above. But again, maybe there were also some requirements from his clients or from who knows what other regulations. Let's not forget, it is built in Germany. And yet they came close to what he envisioned. And it's probably an interesting school. The Jewish Cultural Center in Duisburg in Germany, this one also from the level of the eye, in my opinion, is not so satisfactory. But this one, the Palmach Museum of History in Tel Aviv, is interesting. And I showed already detail, because here the walls emanate life, and because of the texture and because of the organic materials, the natural materials, stone and so on, you have concrete, and which is a conglomerate, as Sprengloy Wright would call it, and then we have stones, and there is a roughness, a rawness, which I think is a quality. It's a better building, and it has various way of various stones, and there is a roughness here, a rawness that I like. And the plants also are interesting. I hope I have, it's here. It reminds me a little of a building that a museum IMP built in Washington. Like in the drawings of Lebbeus Woods, here is also about conflict, like two conflicting triangles, pointing at each other. Yes, it is an architecture of conflict, but conflict is dynamics, is dialectics. Thus, it is life. He also drew by hand because, he grew up as such, although lately he uses the computer. So this is a museum in Tel Aviv. And yes, I think Lebbeus was right. It is easier to connect with this building than with a perfectly designed, parametrically, probably building by Zaha Hadid, perfect in itself, but not so much capable of allowing, ad hoc interventions or neighbors of uncomfortable aesthetics or whatever. So there is a level of hybridity and complexity, because the architecture of Zvi Hecker also accepts and even invites imperfection. And this is important, to say yes even to imperfection, and to say yes even to mistakes, and even to so-called ugliness, because they are part of life, are they not? And if we are to tell the truth about life, we should assume all forces to work together or against each other, but express them. Like this wall, this wall has character, it has life. It is visceral. I like this wall very much. I'm talking about this, not about this, but he uses both. So it's the same museum in Tel Aviv. Here he is drawing just like Lebbeus Woods, alone. Probably he didn't have too many workers around him. But I think he left something behind him. Plus, he's still working. He's still alive at 90. This is a newer work, which I don't like so much as his earlier works. He did some competitions, and I think he began to be a little bit too accommodating for, I don't know, the requirements of the wildness of his early work is not so much present in his later works. But you see here images from his earlier practice as an architect. Here he is. Hello, Mr. Hecker. Happy birthday to you again. A beautiful age and a beautiful white shirt on you. A dreamer, of course. Of course, every good architect is, if it's not, it has to become a dreamer. A dreamer, but a thinker and a doer. A doer who can smile beautifully by saying, architecture, good architecture, real architecture cannot be totally legal. The City Hall from 1959 to 1963, we already saw some images. He built together with Neumann, or I don't know if we saw this already, probably not, but anyway, it is by him and Alfred Neumann. I love this building. It's a City Hall, 50s, early 60s. But look, it looks like it's futuristic, it's utopian. It could be on Mars almost. You know, has some cosmic qualities. Yes, he uses geometry. Yes, he uses rhythm. He uses, geometry very explicitly. But what is here at the top? You know, it's almost surreal. It's almost fantastic, and it's a city hall, for God's sake. A government's building, and the children play. How many children play in front of city halls in our country? Not too many, because the buildings are intimidating, and they communicate. They say, "Stay away from me." Now, this is the synagogue that I called it the chapel inappropriately, and I apologize. It's actually a small synagogue, like a chapel, 1967, 1969, for the army. Colors. Yes, colors. Why not? Look at this. I think it's beautiful. There is a certain determinism derived from the geometry, but I think it's beautiful, and you see images from the inside. A little synagogue, which is abstract. And look at the soldiers, finding rest against a wall which is not vertical. And it's even more comfortable actually to stand up there. If the wall was vertical, you cannot easily do what they do here. Anyway, a very unusual building, you could say this is from a James Bond movie or some kind of science fiction movie. No, it's not. It was built for the army by Zvi Hecker. And it also shows how open-minded the army there is if they build something like this. And they did. I'm rushing a little bit because, again, I have to leave. If we arrive at 8:15, please, one of you tell me it's 8:15. I have to leave at 8:15 with all the regrets. Architecture is beautiful if it is an adventure. If it is not an adventure, it could become depressing and boring and actually not worth doing it. He also built social housing, very, very, very modest houses for these Arabs, actually. I mean, it's an Arab village in 1962, but I think they are very nice. And he is not here extravagant. He understood the limits of the budget of the project, maybe even of the needs. But I think he did an excellent work. These small houses are full of character, and they have architectural poetry. They are very small. They are efficient. They were not expensive to build. He used stone, and it's still a creative architecture done for the Arabs. Very nice when a Jewish architect builds for the Arabs. It's very nice. You look at the site plan and the houses are rectangular, but the plan shows the sites, the sites on which the houses are placed have freer forms, so to speak. Interesting idea. So the houses are rectangular, but the plots of land are not. So he's not just this crazy builder, or a crazy, utopian fantasies. No, he knows how to build, and he builds very, legitimate buildings here, very modest, but working fine. And I wouldn't mind myself living in such a building. And quite sustainable, is it not? Back to the craziness of his school in Berlin, back to this crazy, so-called crazy apartment building in Israel, Haifa, I think. We saw already images with this. This presentation is not the most organized one, and I apologize. This is how it looked initially. Much more deterministic and clean, so to speak, but interesting and futuristic and utopian, and animated by idealism. I like this picture very much with this, Orthodox Jew passing by this building, which could embellish, so to speak, cities like Rotterdam or I don't know what city in Japan. Artists without frontiers. We saw this, the school in Berlin. We saw this. Back to this apartment building again in Israel, the spiralic. I don't know if I use the correct word, but you understand. This is not Antoni Gaudi. It's Zvi Hecker in Israel, and it's different from Gaudi, of course, but also he built in a different time. Not when Antoni Gaudi built. The Royal Dutch Military Police, this is a new project for him, done for a competition. His later works I don't like so much. Obviously he tried to win a competition and get commissions and so on. He became less wild. He still has interesting things, but it's not so refreshing, I would say, as his earlier works. The Polish Solidarity Center, another project for a competition. Again, I think his earlier work is better. This is his proposal for the extension of the Swedish, the Stockholm Public Library that was built by Gunnar Asplund, and this is what he proposed. Zvi Hecker, he didn't win. Anyway, drawings, love for architecture. What can you say? A reference to Piranesi, other drawings, drawing, plans, sections, perspectives, utopian dreams, apartment buildings, the Batumi acquiring design. It's another later work by him, a model, but I don't know if he built it or if he will build. This we saw. These are images from an exhibition he had with his wild drawings with pastels, I guess, maybe, or just colored pencils. I invite the students here to also do such drawings. Don't think of function, don't think of program, just express your love for architecture in whatever medium you find adequate for yourself. Take it out. Take out what is inside of yourself, and mainly that passion that I'm sure and I hope you have for architecture. Your inner truth is perhaps the most important thing that you have. The city hall that he built in the 50s, early 60s. The apartment building again, the museum in Tel Aviv, the first apartment building built in Haifa, they're actually close to each other. He built this one and this one later. The later one seems to me even more interesting. The school in Berlin. I like his smile here again in this picture. A nice man with books and, you know, an architect. He deserves the name, the title, if you want, of an architect. You know, real art and real architecture cannot be totally legal. And that's why you smile. This is about, was a conference about him, Hecker, work of architecture, the spiral apartment we saw, a few more images of it. Unfortunately, my own presentation is a little bit like a snail or a spiral or zigzagging, maybe a little bit questionably, but maybe adequately for this subject. I have many more pictures, unfortunately, I had for Zvi Hecker. I thank you for being here. Happy birthday, Lebbeus. Happy birthday, Zvi Hecker.